Allahu Akbar.
Let's talk 10 worst academics or anything worse. This is places where things are bad, right? So you start getting way out there.
The Islamic Circle of North America is a non-profit, grassroots Muslim American organization working according to the Islamic principles of justice and equality since 1968. Currently, ICNA operates 126 chapters and sub-chapters spread throughout 6 regions within the United States.
Islamic Circle of North America is a grassroots Muslim organization that has chapters throughout the United States. We are trying to share the message of Islam through a series of programs, that are designed for outreach and education, through programs that are designed for social services and relief, and through programs that are designed to have partnerships built with interfaith partners and alliances. We feel that at this time and age, the American public should understand the core principles of this faith, understand the beauty that it presents, understand the solutions that it has to offer.
Inviting humanity to worship Allah is an important obligation on all Muslims. ICNA has initiated numerous national and local projects to empower Muslims in reaching out to people from other faiths.
From the Prophet, peace be upon him, his entire life was to present Islam in a holistic way. And so ICNA has presented Islam, understood Islam, and presented Islam in a holistic way to the society.
Why Islam and Gain Peace are 2 popular outreach projects of ICNA. These projects have initiated many activities to help present a clear view of Islam. Why Islam and Gain Peace billboards on public highways and the 1-877 Why Islam toll-free hotline have been very effective in spreading the message and helping those who have questions about Islam. The ICNA Sisters Wing is a division of ICNA which strives to provide Islamic education and training to women of all backgrounds. Some of ICNA Sisters projects are Noor Magazine, online classes, Institute of Islamic Sciences, and Muslim Children of North America. Young Muslims is a pioneering national youth organization. Young Muslims have established a well-organized network of local youth groups which is called NeighborNets across the nation. The goal of NeighborNet is to build a solid understanding of the principles of Islam and by helping youth put these principles into practice.
YM, also known as Young Muslims, serves to provide an environment where the youth can be themselves and at the same time learn and understand the basic principles of Islam.
YM Sisters is all about creating a safe haven for young Muslim girls to get together and talk about different issues that they're having. We do this through neighbor nets across the country, study circles in which we work on self-development and development of the community around us.
Every year, ICNA hosts the largest American Muslim event known as Muslim Family Day, held at Six Flags in Los Angeles, Chicago, Boston, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and Dallas. Muslim Family Day is usually attended by over 55,000 community members nationwide. The Message is ICNA's bi-monthly magazine. For years, it has delivered stories and articles that keep Muslims informed about the contemporary world. You might think that once a refugee lands on U.S. soil, their worries are over. Not quite. What aspects does ICNA Relief help with? All of them. ICNA Relief has refugee services in 11 states across the country, and our staff helped close to 10,000 refugees originating from countries such as Syria, Burma, Iraq, and others in the past year alone. ICNA Relief has not only sheltered, but helped hundreds of homeless women get back on their feet. Our mission is to provide compassionate social services to underserved communities across the United States, regardless of race or religion.
Mission of ICNA Leave USA is to become the charity of choice for all Americans, Muslims and non-Muslims alike.
Every year, thousands of Muslims attend ICNA annual and regional conventions, along with their families. Relevant themes are expounded upon by the most knowledgeable Islamic scholars.
Let us show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we are serious about His book. We are thankful to be a part of the ummah of His book. We believe in His book. We recite His book. We memorize His book. And most importantly, we act upon His book.
A wide array of vibrant parallel activities and programs are enjoyed by all. The main objective for ILF is enriching the lives of Muslims in general, and Muslim youth in particular, by educating their minds and affecting their hearts with sound knowledge of Islamic Sharia, thus deepening their awareness of Islam as a universal and eternal way of living for mankind, and providing a new caliber of Muslim leaders. ICNA CSJ is a social justice human rights organization that strives to systematically facilitate assertive Muslim involvement in the field of human struggle for the rights of the poor and oppressed in the United States. Since 1968, ICNA has been providing essential services that are needed by the Muslim American community. With Allah's help and your support, ICNA will continue to grow and expand its much-needed programs for years to come, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, subhanallah.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. My brother Shahid and my brother Noah, mashallah. I mean, you had a nice football last Friday, mashallah ta'ala.
Jazakallah khair. How you doing, my brother? Good to see you. How you doing, Shahid Bhai? How you doing, my brother?
I'm fine, thank you, my brother.
Alhamdulillah.
Good to see you, Akhi. You too, brother Yousuf. It's good to I wanted to talk to you after the khutbah, but we missed each other. But alhamdulillah, it's good to see you there. Good to see your sons there. May Allah bless you. Bless you and protect you.
I mean, same to you, brother. May Allah bless you and your children and bless the whole ummah. We need it. We need to be unified, because Islam is about holding out for justice, as the ayat in the Quran states. We have to hold out for justice. This is what helped Islam spread. People think about how we had the great victories with Khalid bin Walid, rahmallah, which is true, but really Islam spread mostly because of the justice of Islam. Like my wife is from the Philippines, and Islam came to that part of the world because of the justice of commerce. The people were, being just in their commerce, given the proper mizan. They weren't weighing down the rice and grain with rocks and water.
Yeah, exactly.
We know what happened. And the king called, "What's going on? You guys are causing uproar in the market." And then the Muslim traders say, "Listen, our Rasulullah told us we have to give equal measure."
Exactly.
And because of that, they took shahada just off of that. And now Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world because of that. So yeah, we have to hold out for justice across the board, inshallah ta'ala.
Let's start our program by reciting the ayah of the Holy Quran. Brother Noah, if you can recite the ayah, and inshallah we can start our program.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen.
Ameen.
And so we start by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and bearing witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except for Allah, and that Muhammad is his slave and his messenger. Ameen.
Ameen, Ya Rab.
Inshallah, even though I can introduce you, but Brother Yousuf, could you introduce yourself to the our membership, inshallah?
Yes, inshallah. First, I'll start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam Karul Muslim Muhammadin wa ala ali sahabi wa ajma'in. Ameen. Basically, I am an accountant. You know, I'm Muslim first and foremost. I'm a member of ICNA Southwest, thanks to you, Brother Shahid. MashaAllah. And no, my profession is accountancy, financial analyst, whatnot. I'm working. My desk is full of stuff right now. I'm trying to catch up because I have people trying to buy homes. I have people trying to get their tax returns done. Have all kinds of things going. Islamically, I'm just your brother Yousuf. You know, I try to get to Salatul Fajr at least 3 times a week. I was there this morning in Corona. Alhamdulillah, they opened up the masjid for the 5 daily salawat. And as from an activist point of view, I am a panelist on the Stop and Frisk Academy in Riverside, California. We have it once per month. And we bring in youth, mostly predominantly Black and brown youth from at-risk areas like South Central Los Angeles, east side of Riverside, so forth and so on, to teach them how to navigate this encounter with the police officers and survive, basically. And then we started adding in later on things like the financial piece, how to try to get out of the financial traps that get us into trouble and into the criminal justice system. So I'm one of the panelists for that, and I've been doing that with Brother Zulu Ali, Attorney Zulu Ali, now for about 4 years. And we take a break during Ramadan, and because of the COVID-19, we've had to kind of take an extended break. We haven't had one since, I think, February, mashallah.
Right. Brother No, even though I know you very well, but could you kindly introduce yourself?
No problem. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. So we start by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise him, we thank him, we ask him for his help, and we seek his forgiveness. Him whom Allah guides, none can misguide, and he whom Allah leads astray never can find guidance. We seek refuge in Allah from the evil within ourselves, and we bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except for Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger. I am your brother Nuh. I am from Long Beach, California, where I am active in the Muslim community. I am a student at the California Islamic University, where I study under Sheikh Mustafa Umar, and I got my Khatib certification from the California Islamic University, and I'm currently pursuing my bachelor's in Islamic Studies, and which is fiqh and aqidah. And you know, the issue of injustice, the issue of racism, all of these things hit home for me. My father, he was an imam, a politician. He always stood for what was right, raised me as a Muslim, and I just continued that on to my adult life, into the life of myself and my children. So I'm actively pursuing justice for all. You know, Black Lives Matter, the marginalization of the human beings, and just making sure that we as a Muslim community, we work together in achieving these goals and getting better as a whole ummah. Alhamdulillah.
What about, tell us a little bit about Embrace and what's your responsibility in California?
No problem. Embrace is a very, very special project, especially for me, and it hits home for me. mainly because one of the things that's not really discussed in the Muslim community, but this is actually a reality, and we all need to pay close attention to this. A lot of the people who join Islam leave Islam. It's a brutal reality of where we are as Muslims. It speaks to who we are as a ummah, as a community, just that we need to get better. And so a lot of the times the Muslims, they may get out of prison. They may come from different walks of life, and they may want to get into the fold of Islam, want to join their local ummah, and they don't feel particularly welcomed by the community. So that leaves distress in their hearts, and they aren't embraced by the community. So that's where this organization Embrace comes in, and we work as an in-between between that individual who converted to Islam and the masjid, and we embrace the individual. We invite them to classes, we invite them to halakas, we invite them to potlucks, where they can learn about the religion, where they can be embraced, where they can have a community, and we can teach them and then usher them back into their own community. So Embrace is an organization that empowers the converts, welcomes them in, educates them, and anybody that knows any converts, I will give you my contact information at the end of this, or right now, if you want to write it down, noah@icna.org. Contact me, and I will tell you about the programs that we have. It's going to start with weekly halakas, and it's going to blossom from there, inshallah ta'ala. So it's definitely a program that's needed in the Muslim community, and inshallah ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless us to have a stronger community, a stronger organization where converts can come and they can feel welcome. And that's what we're here for, alhamdulillah.
Jazakumullah khairan. So, basically the subject which we have in hand today, that's a discussion we're going to do today, that how we as a Muslim community fail to embrace our new brothers and sisters who come to the fold of Islam. And that is the issue which, Muslim community is very reluctant to speak about it. And so this incident of brother, who died recently, brother, the name?
George Floyd.
George Floyd. Yeah, brother George Floyd, who died. So now that brings us to our, in front of our eyes, and it was I always felt it that Muslim community needs to talk about it. So today, inshallah, we're going to discuss it. My name is Shahid Hussain. My responsibility in ICNA is I'm the regional president of Western Hemisphere, which is covers 10 different states. But locally, I'm running a ICNA center, which is a Dawa center, inshallah. And Brother Noah and Brother Yousuf are very dear to me because they are part of me. So, inshallah, that's why when I ask them to come and join me, they just say, right away, they will do it. So the discussion, inshallah, we will do is that Muslim community in general has a responsibility. But the challenge is that the majority of our brothers and sisters does not know the real problem African American community faces. Sometimes we generalize and stereotype people, but the reality is totally different. I happen to be at a lecture with my Sheikh, Dr. Khalid Griggs, and it's opened my eyes. I said, I never thought that way. So until we will communicate to those who are affected by this systematic injustice and systematic racism, we will not be able to find in depth. So I asked Brother Yousuf today to have a presentation on what is systematic injustice and racism, and how it affects the whole community, and how we can understand and help each other. and Brother Noah, inshallah, will join Brother Yousuf in, how we face innerly, how we can deal with it and how we can overcome. Just like he said that he is a part of the program, a movement which is called Embrace, how it will help us and, embrace others and what we need to do. So that's what it is. I will open the forum to Brother Yousuf first, and inshallah, once Brother Yousuf complete his presentation, I'm hoping that we'll have questions coming up by then. We can answer those questions, Brother Yousuf. And Brother Noah, you can interject in between and then support Brother Yousuf's point of view, or you can have your own point of view.
Absolutely.
Jazakallah.
So, brothers, inshallah, I'm going to try to be as concise as possible, be it in the law, to basically lay out the origins of the systematic racism codified here in the United States of America. So, Brother Noah and I both know that, we lost between 80 and 100 million souls in the Middle Passage. That's an estimate. Very, very low estimates of 25 million, but the consensus is between 80 and 100 million African people were lost in the Middle Passage from the west coast of Africa to the American shores. The first slaves in the United States arrived in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. And this was, I guess you could say, the beginning of the codification of white supremacy and racism in the United States of America. So the actual codification and the building blocks of white supremacy and racism in the United States really started with the United States Constitution. It started at the very beginning of the inception of this country. So we know that the Constitution was signed in 1776, July 4th, but it wasn't ratified. It wasn't actually a document that could be enforced in all of the states until we had the Constitutional Convention in 1787. Okay, so during this Constitutional Convention in 1787, the southern slave-owning states had real reservations about ratifying it and joining because they were afraid that they wouldn't have representation and taxation, proper to their population due to the fact that they had slaves. So the famous 3/5 compromise was adopted. And this 3/5 compromise is actually codified in the United States Constitution. In fact, it is found right now. You can look at it. It's in the first article, section 2, clause 3 of the United States Constitution. I'm sorry. That would be the Electoral College. I apologize. This is found in the first article of the United States Constitution, section 2. And so this in clause 3, I'm sorry. So it's article 1, section 2, clause 3, United States Constitution. It talks about how slaves, African people who were enslaved, meaning myself, Brother Safiullah, that Brother Noah, that we were counted as 3/5 of human beings. And this would give the southern slave owning states the representation that they wanted and help them when it comes to allocation of U.S. representatives in the House, and also help them when it comes to receiving tax dollars back from Washington. Okay. And born out of this 3/5 compromise, which again is codified in the Constitution of the United States, they had this thing called the Electoral College. So James Madison, one of the founders of the Constitution, he wanted to have a popular vote, because that's true democracy, right? One man, one vote. So this ties into how Donald Trump, I hate to say this, the white supremacist in chief. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not going to, mince my words. That's what he is. He is the white supremacist in chief. He was put into office because of the Electoral College, which is codified in the Constitution. Now, the actual Electoral College is not in the Constitution, but the electors to the Electoral College is, and that is found in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution, where basically you have 270 electors that will elect a U.S. president every 4 years, okay? And this was also born out of that compromise for the 3/5 of human beings being counted as African slaves in 1787 at the convention, the Constitutional Convention of 1787, okay? And so basically, this is how we got white supremacy and racism codified in the actual founding document of the United States Constitution. It's there today. You can literally go to these articles and these sections of the Constitution, and you see it's still there. Now, we've had amendments. I have to be fair. We've had amendments to reverse some of it, but you have a thing called de jure. So this is de jure. This is the law, right? And then, of course, it has been modified with these amendments that we have. Then you have de facto. So in some cases, the de facto meaning what's actually happening. I call it the handbook. The owner's manual is one thing, but the handbook says this is what really happens. Okay, I'm gonna try to get into that. So things got tenuous after this new country, the United States of America, was founded. We had it ratified in 1787, where Black Africans are 3/5 of human beings, and we have this undemocratic electoral college electing a president, which again was born out of racism. So the electoral college that we still have to this day was born out of racism and white supremacy, just to be clear. Okay. So we have the Civil War in the 1800s, and we finally have the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863. Okay. And Brother Noah and I both know that Juneteenth, which is coming up June 19th, was when the last American slaves found out they were actually freed. It was June 19th, 1865, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay, so what happened was the slave owning states, they lost. The Civil War was primarily fought over slavery. Okay, that's what it was. I mean, they'll try to say states' rights, but no, states' rights to own slaves is what it was about. Okay, and they lost. Alhamdulillah, they lost because evil never prospers. The end of evil is always evil and extreme, as Allah says in the Quran, right? So they lost, and what happened is we had the it was called the reconciliation. I'm sorry, Reconstruction. I apologize. Reconstruction. Okay. So Reconstruction, the era of Reconstruction happened between 1865 and 1877. During that period, the Brother Noah and I, we both know about this 40 acres and a mule, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we know about that. So that was to try to reintegrate freed African slaves into American society. Well, actually, not reintegrate. We were never integrated. To integrate us for the first time ever into American society.
The beauty of that is the acres that they would have given us would have been the acres that we were working on and that we earned anyway. So
I love that.
It was a bit of poetic justice that they brought us over here and they worked us and they enslaved us. And after all of that work, they were supposed to hand back over the acres that we worked upon. But
correct,
as we know, that didn't work out, my brother.
It didn't work out, unfortunately, because the detractors to justice they never stop. Like the Shaitan, we know from the history of Shaykh al-Islam Imam Ahmed, that on his deathbed, he said, "You almost got me," but he didn't. And his son said, "What is it, Abi?" And he said, "The Shaitan said, I almost got you, Ahmed. I almost got his deathbed." The Shaitan never stops. So at any rate, the 40 acres, it was the first part. Okay, and this was a policy by William Sherman. Now I'm from Georgia. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and we know about Sherman. Sherman's March to the Sea. He was a Union general, and he was like, I wouldn't say he was like Khalid bin Walid, rahmallah, but he was very successful. And he burned a path from Atlanta, Georgia, my hometown, to the sea in Savannah. He eviscerated the Confederate forces. And he had a proposal that he issued on January 16, 1865. We proposed or prescribed that us African slaves will get 40 acres that he, like Brother Noah said, that we used to work. The actual land we used to work, we used to pick cotton, plant, whatever. He proposed that we get 40 acres. The mule part came later. Okay, that's like saying 40 acres and I guess an F-250, so you can work the land. That part came later, but as Brother Noah noted, we never got that. But some people, and I have a client right now, they actually have 30 acres. So a few Africans got it. They're from Louisiana. They're from the mid part of Louisiana, and he told me, and he came to my office here. He said, "You know what? We have 30 acres still." He said, "We sold 10 acres to a white family, and he said they go to the high sheriff. The high sheriff is like the sheriff, like the sheriff of Los Angeles County or whatever, and that's where he keeps the tax records. And it shows that they actually sold 10 of their acres back to some white family. They retained to this day 30 acres. So very, very, very few blacks were able to get this 40 acres. And I have a client, the last name is Carter. Okay, their last name is Carter. They're from Louisiana. They actually got it, but most of us, my last name is Barber, which is an English name. So evidently I had some Englishmen that owned my family way, way back actually it was only 155 years to be exact. Wasn't it long ago? We didn't get the 40 acres, and most of us did not get the 40 acres. Okay, but the key is that during Reconstruction, we had more representation in U.S. government than we have now. We had one U.S. governor in Virginia. We had one U.S. senator in Massachusetts. I had his name, but I lost it. I was going to write his name down here, but I don't have it in my notes. And we had, I think, we had about 25 U.S. representatives. They were Republicans. Again, the party of Lincoln is a Republican Party, and things have switched. And we're going to get to that. I'm going to get to that as soon as possible. So I'm going to fast forward. So this progress was basically because of the occupation of the South with federal troops. So they lost the war, and the Union soldiers remained. They occupied the South and enforced these political and economic gains that we got, because they understood that the animosity was still there with the Confederacy. Okay. Then, unfortunately, we had the end of Reconstruction. Now, this is very important. This is what started kind of what we have right now. Okay, it's the birth of Jim Crow. It's the birth of the Ku Klux Klan and all that. So the end of Reconstruction, where we had the one governor, we had the 24 U.S. Representatives in the House of Representatives, and we had one senator out of Virginia. Out of Virginia, we had one senator, and the governor was out of Massachusetts, right? And we had some people, like I mentioned, I actually have a client, they still have 30 of the 40 acres that was promised. But that's a very, very rare occurrence. In fact, they're the only people I know that actually got this 40 acres. All the other black people I know, they didn't get it. Okay, it was just, I guess they just happened to be at the right place at the right time, be it in the love. Okay, so the end of Reconstruction happened in 1877, and it was basically where Southern Democrats, so the Democrats of that era were the Republicans of this era. Literally, it's topsy-turvy, right? I mean, that's the case. So basically, they promised that they would. I'm gonna read it right here. I just took a little note here. It says Southern Democrats promises to protect civil and political rights the blacks gained during Reconstruction were not kept. In the end of federal interference, meaning the actual occupation of Union troops, they agreed, we'll go ahead. It was Ulysses S. Grant or one of the other presidents after him. They said, okay, we'll go ahead. We'll let you police yourselves, okay? And they lied. They were treacherous. Almost like Banu Qurayza, the Jewish tribe that committed treachery in Medina. They signed the Treaty of Medina, and then as soon as we had the people come from Mecca, the Confederates, Surah Azab, they committed treachery, right? So these Southern white Democrats, they promised that they would police themselves and enshrine these gains for black people during Reconstruction. And as soon as the federal troops pulled out, they immediately reneged on it. Okay. And this gave birth to Jim Crow. Okay. This gave birth. So literally, there's a town in South Carolina. I can't remember the name. 1899. 1898. They had literally. They had the mayorship of this town. Oh my God, what's the name of this town? It's a pretty sizable town. I just saw it on HBO the other night, where they got rid of the mayor, the black mayor. They burnt all the businesses, a la Tulsa, Oklahoma, in 1921. This was before Tulsa. This is in South Carolina. I forgot. It's one of the major towns. I can't think of the name of it right now. And they forced the black Republican U.S. representative holders to basically resign their seats by force. Okay, it's 1899. In fact, I'll find it later. And right now, I'm getting a little old. It loses my mind right now. MashaAllah ta'ala. I'm getting close to the cover. Alhamdulillah.
May Allah extend us. May Allah extend your life.
I mean, Ya Rab. So So Jim Crow laws, and Brother Noah knows it, this is where you have the separate but not equal. They claimed it was equal for the federal government, but it was not equal. That's where you had separate schools. This is where blacks were had to drink out of separate water fountains. This is where in the movie theaters, blacks had to sit up top and the whites were at the bottom. We had to sit up in the balcony. And this is like, my father was telling me, he's passed now, but he was saying, the Rahmallah, that back in the 40s and 50s, he was born in 1930, that you know how when you're driving through the U.S. and you have to use the restroom, right? You can go to any restroom you want to now, and it's pretty much clean. He said during Jim Crow segregation, they purposely did not keep up the restrooms. They were just filthy, and that's what we're relegated to. Okay, and in some instances, I remember listening to the brother Musa Abdul Alim, Imam Musa Abdul Alim. He has a masjid in Oakland and also one in D.C. He said, yeah, that was true. He said also sometimes they had no restroom. We had to go actually into the bushes and relieve ourselves. This is what Jim Crow did. And of course, you had, when it comes to voter intimidation, the Ku Klux Klan is not a governmental unit, but they kind of act hand in hand with the sheriff. Sometimes the sheriff was a grand wizard, and they would intimidate black voters from, if you vote, we find out you're voting, or if you're registering people to vote, we're going to lynch you. And they would lynch us, kill us, string us up, and cut off our genitalia and burn us at the stake. And that's why I had to tell a brother, he didn't know, it's not his fault. A brother, a Desi brother, mashallah, that, listen, brother, please don't say the word picnic, say cookout, say outdoor lunches. So don't say picnic, because picnic, let me explain to you what picnic is. This is during the lynching era of Jim Crow. Picnic is literally this: eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pick a nigger by his toe. If he hollers, let him go, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. That's what they would literally have their women in bonnets, and they would have pick a nigger baskets, excuse my French, that's what it was. They would bring out their food, and they would watch as the white mob, the lynch mob, would string up unsuspecting blacks coming home from school, coming home from work or whatever, and string them up. It was like a festival. You can look this up to this day. So please don't ever say the word picnic. It literally goes back to the Jim Crow lynching era. Okay. Now you know. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Jazakallah khair for that information.
Why yokum? Why yokum? That's why I say please say cookout. Don't say pick. Please don't say that. And then picnic basket. That's what it is. It means pick. Basket, right? We're gonna put food in there. We're gonna watch the men catch some unsuspecting black person and string them up. Okay, and then set them afire. I mean, this is the stuff we had to live through. And they have a lynching museum in Alabama, Montgomery. They estimate that about 600,000 blacks were lynched during that era. I mean, that's amazing. It's appalling. But this is what happened. So at any rate, they had, when it comes to voting, of course, they had the physical intimidation where they would lynch you, and they would burn your house down to prevent you from voting, scare you, basically like mob type tactics. Then they had things where if you were brave enough and bold enough, I'm going to go anyway, they had this thing called the poll tax. Okay. So, you shut out of jobs already, right? And it's very difficult to have economic activity in our neighborhood. So you want to vote, okay, pay this poll tax. And back then in 1920s, 30s, the poll tax may be something like, $20. But guess what? $20 in 1920 is a lot of money. If you can't pay that poll tax, you can't vote. And let's say that you had enough bravery, right? You had enough bravery to go to the poll, despite the lynching and the burning down your house threats, and you had the $20 to pay the poll tax. Now you got to have the literacy. Then they had what's called poll test. Okay, you can look this up. Poll test. So, okay, all right, you got your $20. Okay, now you got to pass a test. When was the Constitution ratified? 1787. If you can't pass a poll test, you can't vote. So you had to go through all these hoops and loops to vote. So it had the effect of tamping down the black vote, so we couldn't attain our power based on our representation, based on our population. And you literally saw this. Let me tell you, I heard Jalen Rose say something yesterday on MSNBC or CNN. Tuesday, we had a primary vote in Georgia, my home state. In the black areas, there were 3-hour waits. The line was literally almost a mile long. Okay. And this is, like he said, this is not a broken system. It is acting as it was intended by design. They designed it to be this way. So a person had to wait, a black lady had to wait 3 hours to vote. She went to a white part of town and found that there was no line whatsoever, plenty of polling spaces, plenty of polling stations, easy to get in and out. So it has the effect of trying to discourage you. I can't wait 3 hours. I'm sickly. I have asthma, or I have diabetes, or I have crutches, or I have to get to work for my low paying, whatever it is, right? And it has the effect of tamping down the vote from people of color, and thus the white supremacists can, retain power. Okay, so this is Jim Crow. Now, I'm going to get into this part here. So during Jim Crow, we had the first major piece of civil rights legislation. It was Plessy versus Board of Education. Okay, Topeka versus Topeka, Kansas, where the Supreme Court struck down this separate but equal doctrine. It said no, it's not equal. Separate is not equal. That's where we had the integration of schools started, and that's where we had the reintroduction of federal troops into the South. Little Rock, Arkansas. Look it up. 1955. That first young lady had to go to elementary school. It was a mostly white school. And of course, the white Southerners did not want to go in there. So the president, Eisenhower, had to send federal troops, had to send National Guard in to escort her in. You can look it up and you can see it. Okay, that was the beginning of the civil rights movement. Then, of course, we understand what happened with Rosa Parks. She refused to give up her seat to a white man. She was tired. I'm not getting up. She went to jail. And then we had the Montgomery bus boycott. By the way, economics is what really turned them around, because their pockets were restrained because black folks refused to take the bus system, and they lost a lot of money. Then we had the seminal Civil Rights Act of 1964. Why this is important for Muslims, Brother Shahid and all of my brothers who are immigrants, you are here because of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. When that legislation was signed by Lyndon Baines Johnson, the president after President Kennedy, with Martin Luther King sitting along his side and other civil rights leaders, that opened the door for the next year, the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965, which allowed Brother Shahid Hussein and all other brothers from Philistine, India, Pakistan, wherever, Bangladesh, to immigrate to the United States. If it wasn't for that, you were not allowed, because America had a racist immigration system. Okay, and the only immigrants that they allowed in the turn of the 20th century, the 1900s, were immigrants from Europe, but not Western. So Western Europeans settled the country, right? Then they allowed, in the early 19th century, they allowed Italians, they allowed Irishmen, and they allowed Polish people in. Okay, and now I'm gonna get into the economic part. So
not to interrupt you, my brother. How you said, which was, I don't want anybody to miss what you said, how you said Martin Luther King was standing right in back of the president when he signed this bill to let all of the immigrants into America. Yeah, well, so even though people thought that Martin Luther King was just marching for black people, no, he was marching for all people. And that says something about, African Americans, how we were oppressed, how we were, racism was used as such of a weapon against us. Correct. But we still didn't pick up the tactics of the people that were doing these things, and we were still pushing for rights for all human beings.
Correct. That is absolutely correct. It is. Go ahead, brother.
Now, the interesting point which I like to bring, and that was also a systematic injustice to a black community. What I heard is they did it purposely to keep the black community in lower position. So they strictly allow the immigration to come, fill the gap which in civil rights movement, Martin Luther King and others bring about the change, and they were ready to bring the community up. Then they open up the immigration for all, and I was a product of that immigration.
Correct.
But we replaced the blacks, and the blacks are still in the bottom of the chain.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, we're at the very bottom of the socioeconomic. In fact, our last I checked was about 5 years ago. African American household income is about $32,000 median, median, and Hispanics are about 33,000. They're very close to us, but they're actually above us just a little bit. We're like really we're together, but 32 for us, 33 for them. That was 5. It's more now. And then you go to I believe whites at 57,000, and Asians were at 60,000. Now it's funny if you extrapolate Nigeria, you extrapolate Africans, not African American descendants of slaves, Africans, they're very high. They were like 60,000 because they believe in education. I mean, they're strong, staunch. Everybody I meet from the continent, they're all PhD holders. I mean, I didn't even know it until they tell me. I'm like, oh wow! I call their phone doctor. So I said, well, I didn't know you had a PhD. They believe in that. But anyway, back to you're right, brother. They did bring in they opened up the floodgates because of a combination of things, but primarily because of that push from 1964 Civil Rights Bill that the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 occurred. Now, back to what Shahid was saying. So they gave a job. So the wave of immigration that became before that was, you saw it in the black and white grainy videos in the early 19th century, people coming to Ellis Island, right? They were coming from, again, Ireland. They were coming from Poland. They were coming from Italy. That's when the Italians came here. And of course, the Italian mob, just continued. But that's a separate. I'm not trying to cast dispersion on the Italian brothers and sisters. I'm just saying that's what came over from the homeland because they were allowed to come in. And they gave them, I want you to listen carefully. Unlike us, well, they did give us something in what's called Reconstruction. They gave something to us, but then it was taken away when the troops pulled out. So they gave these newly arrived European immigrants, they gave them a Jobs Act. So they would give police jobs to Irishmen. That's why right now in New York City, the majority of the captains and chiefs, they're Irish because they inherited this from the Jobs Act program in the early 1920s to integrate these newly arrived Irishmen. So that's why a lot of Irishmen in Boston and in New York, they have these police jobs. Okay. Mm-hmm. They excluded us, but they gave them the jobs. Then when it came to construction, okay, and things of that nature, they gave them to Italian Americans. That's why the Italian Americans were able to get into the unions and also the Polish Americans. Okay. It was a Jobs Act to help them, get them a footing here in this new country because they came with nothing. But as African Americans who have to build the country, we got nothing. Okay. We got nothing. Okay. And so after this, during Jim Crow, you had a thing called redlining. Redlining is very important because I did a presentation at the Stop and Frisk Academy about the gap, the wealth gap that we have. And it's directly traced to redlining. And of course, before that, the jobs programs that the newly arrived immigrants from Ireland and Italy and Poland got that we didn't get. Okay. They were able to get the good union jobs. We got nothing. Maybe we got a scrap here or two, but they got, they got all the good jobs. There was we're going to help them get integrated into society. So redlining basically is, I'm going to read it, what I have the note here. In the United States, it's a systematic denial of various services by federal government agencies, local government agencies, as well as private sector to residents of specific neighborhoods, i.e. black and brown neighborhoods, okay? And they do it by selectively raising prices. What I mean by price, I mean the actual price of loans. Like instead of a 3% loan, interest rate, which is unfortunately that's rebel, but instead of that, you get maybe a 10 or 15%. You can't get the loan. You can't get it. And they also denied you insurance. So let's say maybe you get that 15% horrible riba loan, right? You can't get the loan insured. Guess what? You won't close. So a lot of the African Americans didn't own their own properties because they couldn't buy. Redlining prevented them from buying. Whereas in the white neighborhoods, they could get these nice loans, no problem. Okay, and I'm going to add something else, too, that I just found out. You had a lot of black soldiers and sailors fighting in World War II and World War I. Then you had the famous GI Bill the GI Bill is the single biggest piece of legislation that increased the middle class of America overall, okay? Because when these soldiers came back from World War II, they were able to buy these houses at these very low VA rates, okay? So African Americans who lived in Ohio and New York, they were able to get this VA loan. Guess what they did in the South? I just found this out. They begged and pleaded with the government, let us administer it locally. Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama. So you could be a U.S. soldier, veteran, who has a right to a VA loan, but you live in Mississippi, the governor will deny you your loan. He will deny you. And see, I mean, it's insidious, man. It's just, oh my God, this is the systematic, tamping down of Black American progress. Okay, so redlining is what they also did. Of course, I just mentioned. They gave you very, very high interest rates, and they wouldn't insure you at all. So you couldn't get a business in your name. You had to probably use someone else. That's why a lot of people were able to come in and open up businesses where we couldn't. We did have some, but it was a monumental task, okay? And then you have this great income gap. So the wealth inequality gap between black and brown people and non-white, and white people has grown over the last 50 years from 1963 to 2013. Okay, so it really grew, and this is the result of redlining. Okay, and so basically what you have is you have a situation where in the 30s, white Americans will have an average of $140,000 of wealth. And that's primarily because they inherited maybe a house with some equity from their parents, maybe some stocks and bonds, and that's not so bad. But guess what? By the time these people get to their 60s, that gap is $1 million on average. It's 11 times the wealth of black people because we have such a hard time getting home loans, such a hard time getting decent, jobs and whatnot. And there, another caveat I'm going to here. In the early 70s, in the industrial Midwest, black people start winning elections. Coleman Young of Detroit, for example, and in Cleveland and whatnot. And what happened is, I've heard these right-wingers talk about this, mismanagement of Democratic mayors. No, that's not what happened. They're not telling you the whole story. What happened was, when they saw that black people were starting to get political power in these Midwestern industrial cities, they pulled the powers that be pulled the industrial base out. So Ford, Chrysler, GM, they pulled the factories out of Detroit and Cleveland and whatnot and put them out into the far-flung suburbs, okay? And now you got no tax base. The residents who used to be able to go down to the local factory, get a good job, they can't go there anymore. It's not there anymore. They got to go way out to the suburbs. And that further choked off the economic life of inner city African Americans and people of color. So this is the 70s now. I'm coming to the current day, right? And this just continues. And they also deindustrialized education. Used to have auto shop, used to have in high school. When I was in high school, I finished high school in '86. And that was the last era of having some kind of industrial education in high school. I remember that. They pulled it out on purpose because everybody can't be an accountant, CPA, financial analyst like I am, right? Or an attorney, or they can't be an engineer. But you can at least get a skill as a welder, a master plumber, or master electrician, or master carpenter, and make decent money. So they pulled this education out of the high schools and whatnot. Now you have a bunch of uneducated, unskilled African Americans, and fighting for very, very few schools. Then you introduce crack cocaine in 1985, okay, during the Reagan administration, and guns. And guess what you have? You had the explosion of the crack era. The first thing was we had the heroin era in the 1970s. Then in the 80s, you had the crack, and then you have this is what affects what happened to Brother George Floyd. Okay, then as a result of young African American men fighting for very few resources amongst each other, selling dope, okay, which is haram. We understand that, but they're trying to survive, right? Then you have the famous crime bill of 1994. In that crime bill, this is during the Clinton presidency, by the way, and this is what hurt Hillary Clinton, because she was, the first lady, and her husband, and even Joe Biden was part of the co-authors of this bill. So what it did was it really demonized a particular type of criminality, crack cocaine sales, which almost 95% affected people of color, black and brown people. Okay, so to give you an example, 1 ounce of powder cocaine sale. We know this is haram. We know that Allah says fetch telebu. I'm just talking about what's happening here. With how they systematically keep people of color down economically and politically and whatnot. So 1 ounce of 1 ounce of powder cocaine sales equals 1 year in jail. This is the crime bill of 1994. 1 ounce of crack cocaine, 1 ounce equals 5 years in jail. Okay, so who does that affect? It affects black and brown people. And on top of that, you have mandatory minimums. If you get caught with 3 or 4 rocks, automatic 25 years. So it had the effect of devastating African American families. Now you're taking fathers, husbands, uncles out of the household for 25, 30 years. And then what happens to our families? We have a problem in the African American community with our families being devastated. And the crime bill helped further devastate it. Okay, that's why now you're talking about prison reform. Now we have now we go to present day. Okay, police. This is gonna be the end of my basic little. I try to make it as concise as possible. Okay, now we talk about the racial injustice and criminal justice system. I talked about basically the crime bill of 1994, what it did to really swell the prison system with African Americans. In other words, we're 14, maybe 15% of the population. We wake up over half of the prison population, right? Because this crime bill helped explode it. Okay. Now, when it comes to police brutality, okay, I'm gonna give you guys a little background on police. Did you know that the modern day police departments in the United States started with slave patrols in the South? Did you know that?
No, I
think a lot of people didn't know that. That's
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it literally. So I'm gonna read a little excerpt here that I just pulled down just yesterday for this presentation. So modern police department. This is from a Harvard Press, article, right? Mm-hmm. Modern police departments are descended from slave patrols, particularly the Stono Rebellion. On Sunday, September 9th, 1739, in Stono, South Carolina, 60 slaves rebelled, setting out for freedom in Florida, killing more than 24 whites along the way. Okay, whites at that time held all the power in the South, but by the late 1700s, they were beginning to be vastly outnumbered by slaves, us African Americans, who were bought over by the boatload to make plantations profitable. Okay, so in response to the Stono Rebellion, this is a slave revolt, and then 24 or so whites were killed when these slaves revolted. South Carolina became the first of 3 slave-owning states to adopt a comprehensive slave code. Okay, and with this code, the code established slave patrols or paddy rollers. Have you ever heard the word paddy wagon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Put you in a paddy wagon. Well, the precursor to paddy wagon is a paddy roller, because they didn't have motor. It wasn't mechanized in the 1700s. So they had carriages, and they would literally round up slaves and put them in a paddy roller. Now, when you put people in the paddy wagon, and their brother Noah knows about this, right? That's where it started. Okay, that's where it started from, right?
Yeah.
So these groups of white men were charged with a civic duty to keep slaves down and keep revolts from happening. Okay, and so this is the modern precursor to the modern precursor to the police departments that we have now. Okay. And of course, you have the situation where the militarization of police has occurred in the last 100 years. Used to be officer friendly with a billy club and a pistol. Now they got these big armored personnel carriers. And when I got to California, you had this thing called the battle ram. Now I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. What is a battle ram? And then I said, wow, it's like a tank. And they come knock your house. Brother, no, he remember, he knows about that, right? And so it's become militarized.
Excessive force.
Excessive force. And so the police have become like an occupying force, and we African American and brown people, Hispanics basically, are considered enemy combatants in our own neighborhoods. So the police are like an occupying force, and the residents are considered enemy combatants. So now you understand why they don't have any humanity, or they can kill Brother George Floyd 8 minutes and 46 seconds. He's just an enemy combatant. $20 allegedly a $20 counterfeit bill. He deserves to be lynched. That's why people uproar. That's like bringing back. It was like a public lynch. The man was begging for his life, for his life. Then he ended up calling for his umi. He called for his umi. His umi passed 2 years ago. Mama, he called because he knew he was going. And the man, and he had his hands in his pocket. It was just insidious. So
broad daylight,
in broad daylight, back to this lynching era. It really was like, and so what happened is, alhamdulillah, there's car and everything, right? So the invention of these cell phones have brought this into the homes of white Americans, and they were appalled because there are more decent people than evil people. Trust me, always. Okay, and they were like, this is appalling, this is disgusting. Now they can see what we've been saying for years. We African Americans and brown, we've been saying this for years. Now Americans can see it in live and living color, right? And that's why you see all of these young white people protesting. You see, I couldn't believe it. Even NASCAR said we're going to take down the Confederate flag. I said, wow, NASCAR? I'm from the South. I thought that would never happen, right? I mean, that shows you how things
What
are
about
shifting.
NFL? NFL has changed
And the
mind.
NFL, I mean, you know, they're known to have plantation owner type mentality, right? Like David Sterling from the former Clippers owners, right? That's how they think. And even they said, no, we were wrong, because they understand that we can't continue in this evil vein anymore. So, you know, some of the solutions, I think, to police brutality can be, one thing is if we can get rid of qualified indemnity. So this is something that a lot of people, even I didn't know this. You can sue the police department, right? But you can't sue Officer, what's his name, Chauvin. He's the one that killed George Floyd, because of a thing called qualified immunity. That means that you can go after the police department, and if you do win, guess what? No sweat off of the officer's back. My pensions are secure. My paycheck is secure. My house is secure. My F-250, my RV, my boat, all that's secure. The department pays it. Guess who that means? That means that we, the taxpayers, pay the lawsuit out. If you get rid of qualified indemnity, which is also in the bill introduced by the Democrats, by the way, on Monday, then you can go after the actual police officer on a civil level, along with the criminal aspect that they also introduced. We have a separate prosecutor that doesn't work buddy with the police every day. He's just a special prosecutor to prosecute police misconduct. That's a good thing. But qualified indemnity means that now you don't need beyond reasonable doubt. You just need a preponderance of evidence, which is very low standard. And if Officer Chauvin knows that, hey, I may lose my house, I may lose 25% of my paycheck, I may lose 25% of my pension when I retire,
I may go to prison. Because that wasn't even an option before. You know, it was so many years that went by that no Los Angeles Police Department police officer was ever tried with killing anybody. You know, and that trickled down. You know, different states had different statistics, but they were very, very low.
No, brother, you're right.
Just putting that uniform on every single day and knowing no matter what I do, I will not be punished for it.
Correct. In other words, there's no hisab, no accountability, right? So they do what they want, you know. I mean, you know, that's what keeps us who have some taqwa in check. We understand that Allah Azza wa Jalla is gonna call us to account.
I mean,
so it'll give us breaks. Islam gives us breaks, right? But these officers, they have no hisab, and then they're not Muslim, so they don't understand the concept of what's going to happen on the other side, right? Or what's going to happen when Malik or Mo takes them. They don't understand that part. So okay. But even here, if there's some kind of accountability, hey, if I trust me, like the Montgomery Boyce boycott, if they understand that they can lose 25% of their pay, their pension, lose their house because you can take the house, lose their RV, all the little toys they have, they'll think twice about lynching somebody in broad daylight. Trust me, okay? And this is part of their solution. And I'm gonna turn it over to you, brothers. I was listening to something like this of 4 African-American imams on the East Coast. And they have been imams, I say respectively, collectively for at least, I say 15, 20 years. They have been Muslims for a collective about 30 years. And they were saying that a lot of immigrant brothers were coming out to them, what can we do? And they said, yes, they can help us without a doubt. But we have to, since we're in the neighborhoods, our masjids are in, for instance, one of the masjids was in Atlantic City, which is, considered, kind of a, not wealthy area, whatnot, except for the boardwalk where they have the haram, right? Another one was in Pittsburgh. Another one was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And they said that the immigrant brothers can absolutely help us by helping us with resources to help, with education, to help with jobs programs, to help us get a supermarket, halal supermarket, whatever, so we can have businesses so they can help us that way. And I said, I said to myself, I agree that could be a really big help. But this is just an introduction to the institutionalized racism in America. It started with the Constitution of the United States. It's still there. You can look it up yourself. Electoral College, 3/5 of human beings, and it continued on all the way down to this very day.
SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. That was very powerful, Akhi. May Allah reward you for putting together that information.
And
for anybody that is listening to this presentation, know that this marching is real. Know that this public outcry is real. This is for a real reason. The brother just went back hundreds upon hundreds of years of this same racism going on over and over and over again. We were labeled as 3/5 of a human being. Subhanallah, 3/5 of a human being. But that tells you right there, before they could start dehumanizing people, they had to characterize them not as real people. So their heart will feel all right with the mistreatment of these people. So we can't fall into line with that. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in his last speech, you are all from Adam, and Adam is from dust. There is no virtue for an Arab over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab over an Arab, nor for a white person over a black person, nor for a black person over a white person, except for righteousness. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 1400 years ago, 1400 years ago, was working to abolish this racism and mistreatment based upon the color of your skin, not based upon how you act or anything of that nature. Just based upon the color of your skin, you are mistreated. So if you think about, we are Muslims in America. We are in the midst of all of this racism, as Brother Yousuf was saying, that we've seen for our brothers, our black brothers. How do we not expect that to seep into the way that we act? How do we not expect to look at these injustices and not have them change us? So we have to work as Muslims, even as Muslims, we have to work to keep this away from us, to not let the
problem is that, brother, no, we as a community, we think it is not our problem. It's somebody else's problem. And that's the challenge we have. Go ahead.
Yes, and just imagine if somebody stood on the minbar and they said, this mosque that we're in, it's only for Desi people. It's only for black people. It's only for Arab people. What if somebody stood on the minbar and said that? The uproar that it will be, how disrespectful it will be. But you know the crazy part about that? This is actually said inside mosques, but it's not said verbally. It's said with actions. When you have programs that take place in the mosque and there are predominantly one type of people, when you have lectures and potlucks inside the mosque and it only has one type of food, what are we saying as a community? We are saying that it's only one type of people that is welcome, you know, and that causes alienation among your black brothers and sisters, because we are used to feeling like that. We are used to being alienated in our lives. So when we walk in a mosque and that happens, we don't take offense. We say, wow, this is how you're doing it. And you just don't see us. Subhanallah. Because you know that the messed up part about all of this is, if we as Muslims, if we are racist towards each other, when we push each other outside of the mosque, you end up pushing somebody outside of the fold of Islam totally. That's what we run the risk of by this racism amongst our people, because 1/3 of Muslims are African American. So even if you're not going through this yourself, you know of a brother who's going of this. 1/3 of the community feels like this. 1/3 of the community has been marginalized in society. 1/3 of the Muslim community has ancestors who suffered from Jim Crow, who had to go to the colored drinking fountain, like Brother Yousuf said. 1/3 of the Muslim community has experienced that. So it's no way, like Brother Shaheed said, that we can turn a blind eye to this and say this has nothing to do with us. This has everything to do with us. Because black Muslims in 2017, they were surveyed, and it came to light that they suffered just as much racism in their religion as Christians as anybody. So we are supposed to be the moral character. We're supposed to lead, you know, not only Americans but religions in our morals. Like it's a big national newspaper ad or national scandal if they see a Muslim acting not like a Muslim, and that's treacherous, and that holds us to a high esteem. But we have to look at, how do people look at us? They look at us with such high esteem. They look us to be morally right. So we have to internally, we have to live up to that internally. We have to do better as a community to live up to that. So we had a famous story in Islam, is the story of Shaitan. And we're told this story as Muslims. We know this story, how Shaitan Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was trying to have Shaitan prostrate to Adam. And Shaitan said, and this is in the Quran, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, I am better than him. You created me from fire and created him from clay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then get down from it, from paradise, for you have no right to be arrogant here. So get out. You are truly one of the disgraced. But one beautiful part of this story is that if Shaitan exists within us, it will make us override one of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just by our racism that exists within us, whether we know it or whether we know not, we know that we're not supposed to treat our brothers like this. But the racism within us, as Allah teaches us, will make us override a direct command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why it's good for us to have an internal view, us to look at what's going on and us to really take account of this, because it could change who we are and how we act as Muslims. So I just want to touch on the two types of racism. One of the types of racism is called explicit bias. This is when you have thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that a person, these are thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that a person holds consciously. So if someone who openly says that certain races are more athletic and less intelligent or more likely to commit a crime than other races, that's explicit bias. That's right in your face. I'm racist. And we see that with the American flag, like Brother Yousuf said, it was banned in NASCAR because it's explicitly inciting racism. However, there's also something that's called implicit bias. Implicit bias is when thoughts, feelings, and beliefs a person holds subconsciously. And I think that that's what we suffer from in the Muslim community, and that the person does not realize it, because it's like if someone who is skeptical of Islamic scholarship from a non-Arab, that's implicit bias, or non-Desi, or considers American-born converts Islam less authentically Muslim. These are things that we suffer from. This is implicit bias, but this is also racism, and this is brought on by the media. This is brought on by, like Brother Yousuf said, you see society treating one type of people one way. You just, without knowing, you start to get this bias. You know, you see nothing but thugs and criminals on TV, and that's all they portray them as black. When we know that criminals come in all shapes and colors, and they all of them commit all types of crimes, and to highlight one group as criminals, it bleeds into who we are, into our community, unfortunately. So we have to be very due diligent about how we tackle this problem. There's one thing about being a Muslim: you cannot be a Muslim without being brave. You cannot be a Muslim without being brave. And the first thing that we need to do to tackle this problem is we have to be brave, because it takes us to look within ourselves. We can't be dismissive. We can't be dismissive and say that this has nothing to do with me, because we need to be more sensitive to our brothers who this is acting upon, this is directly affecting. So some of the things that I think that we can do as a Muslim community to change these things, like Brother Yousuf said, he pointed all of these things out. So if we are in doubt of whether or not these things are taking place, we shouldn't be. One of the things we need education. We need education, learning about each other, of different backgrounds, experiences, and struggles. You notice how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, O humanity, we have created you from a single male and female and made you into communities and tribes in order for you to get acquainted with each other. Certainly the most honorable of you with God is the most righteous among you. So a lot of people look at racism and they say, you know, it's different people from different communities. What is it? This is an opportunity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. This is an opportunity. Are we missing our opportunity? Are we squandering our opportunity? Allah made us of different tribes so we can get to know each other. Yeah. Are we getting to know each other? Are we getting to know each other?
Only in Fajr time, that's all.
Yes. Certain time. What maybe Malcolm X Day or something like that. Yeah.
That's it. You know, and we should know what we like to eat. We should eat foods from different tribes. We should sit down and share stories and have things like this where we can get people from different backgrounds to speak. The other thing that we need to do is,
I will interject here. You know, the other day, remember when you and I was talking, and you know, you mentioned about the story of your father. It was so inspiring for me. It was amazing. But the challenge is that how many times we come and learn these stories from firsthand from brother, and these stories are not 100 years ago. These are stories. It happened to your lifetime because you learned directly from your father. You know.
Exactly.
So that is important for me to know each other and tell the story. Storytelling is also will break the barrier we have in our ranks. You know.
Exactly, because it's beautiful. Because even my father, he went through things to learn the Deen of Islam that even I didn't even have to go through. So he came up, he accepted Islam in prison, and he went through so many trials and tribulations, and having his family accept him, just being able to access the right books and services and things inside of being confined that he needed, and just to take him where he is today. Now you survey that against your own Islam, and you say, wow, I didn't have to go through all that. I'm appreciative of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me not to have to be in prison, not to have to go through these trials and tribulations, not to have to go against my family in order to carry the Deen of Islam. So it's a beautiful thing, and the other thing is the accommodation, like Brother Yousuf said, and it's how we can accommodate each other. We have Black African American people in our mosque that are going through trials and tribulations. How do we accommodate these people? How do we make things available to them that wouldn't be available to them in regular society? Because like Brother Yousuf said, we know how society is treating us African Americans. How are we being accommodated inside of the mosque so it doesn't mirror the same thing? We don't go inside the mosque and say, you know what, I'm not going to do anything for these African Americans because they're lazy, they're this and that, and they're repeating all of the things that they've heard in society. It has to be different than that. We have to go together so we are accommodated, so we can help each other. The other thing that we need is, and I'll just have a couple more things. We need purification. We need purification, which is honesty within ourselves, looking inward to examine our hearts, and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rectify us, to increase us, to purify our hearts. It will grant us the courage to admit to ourselves the ways of racism, the way racism has seeped into our ranks, and hold us and others accountable when they underestimate the gravity of it. So you, Brother Shahid, if you're having a conversation within the groups of people that you have conversations with, you're educated. So if those people start talking out of line and say, the Black people, they're exaggerating, it's not as bad as you can think. We have people in different communities to educate those people and say, you know what, stop talking like that. That's not how it is. We shouldn't speak like that. We should all get together. These African Americans, they're all our brothers. We all came from Adam, alayhi salam. There's no difference between my African American brother and my brother that's at home. You see what I'm saying? So one of the things that the poisons that they got into us is they demonized when people help us. They demonize when people help us because they put the fear into the heart of the people who help us and say, you know what, if you help them, we're going to treat you exactly the same way.
Yes.
And that's not the case. And that has put fear into the hearts of the people who even wanted to help us. You see? And like I said from the start, you cannot be Muslim without being brave. So we can't run into that same fear. We have to stand up for each other, even if it's 100% guaranteed that they will treat you the same way. we still have to stand up for each other. We still have to look out for each other. So we have to be brave in tackling this thing of racism. We can't let the outside of society, like Brother Yousuf said, the people who don't even follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they stand up for racism and they stand up for justice. We have to be even more due diligent in that.
Correct.
And the last thing is we just need to come together, and we need to just work together. And the story of Abu Dar, and the story of Bilal radiallahu anhum. Abu Dar was a Sahaba, and he got angry, and he called Abu Dar the son of a black woman, which was extremely offensive. And Bilal immediately he went to get the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet, when he heard about that, he immediately went and he confronted Abu Dar. And he told Abu Dar, you have some days of ignorance in you, some days of jahalil in you, Abu Dar. And Abu Dar, he put his face on the ground. And he said, I am not going to move my face until Bilal steps on my face. He went immediately and he rectified his behavior. Was Abu Dar a racist? Was he a racist? No. He wasn't a racist. He wasn't a racist. He was somebody who got extremely angry, and he let Shaitan take control of him. So that's the other thing is with our brothers who may be going back and forth and maybe feel a lot of guilt within themselves, within our community. Don't take it so hard on yourself. Don't take it so hard on yourself. You know, you have time, just like Abu Dar, he immediately rectified his behavior. He just rectified his behavior. And he said, you know what? I will never do that again. So we have to have that within ourselves to want to change, to want to fight against this racism that's going on in society and against 1/3 of our community, our black Muslim brothers and sisters. And we have to do something about it, not just talk about it. Not just talk about it. You can't talk about fasting for 30 days. That's not going to happen. You can't say, you know what? I fasted 27 days. Is that enough? No. You have to make up those 3 days. You have to fast the 30 days. Did you pray your 5 times salat today? You only did 4? Well, you owe 1 more.
Yes.
It doesn't just go away. This problem is not going to just go away. And you know what? I almost did something. You know, I may have paid some money. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us we have to be proactive. We have to do something. We have to be people of action. People of action, not of talk. You know? So, alhamdulillah. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless and protect us and forgive us.
Ameen, Ya Rab.
Inshallah, so we're going to conclude our session. So this is by not any means, it's not the end of our conversation. We're going to continue our talks. Maybe we'll develop a forum once the COVID was go down, and have these session open to public. This session was open public too also, and we are broadcasting on Facebook. So hopefully people will learn from this, and we'll continue doing it. But I will urge all of my audience to support Embrace, where Brother Noor is trying to develop a leadership within this Islamic community. When Brother Noor mentioned that 1/3 of our community belongs to African American, our leadership also reflect that. And it has to be important, because this is the time we should train our young ones and those who just embracing Islam to come up as a leader and run the affairs of Muslims. And unless and until we will not gonna give this responsibility to indigenous Muslims to take this leadership to next level, I think as a community, as a Muslim community, we'll not going to go any further. This is my So at the end, I will ask Imam Safiullah to make the dua, and we will end the session, inshallah.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إسرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا والحمد لله ما طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. Oh Allah, do not put on us a burden greater than we have strength to bear. Oh Allah, do not try those that like you did try those before us. Oh Allah, strengthen us, have mercy upon us. You are our protector, grant us victory against the disbelieving people. Ameen.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much, Brother Yousuf.
Oh, and by the way, that was Greenville, South Carolina, 1899. That's when they wiped out the black leadership. Greenville, South Carolina.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.